that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. We'll wait a few minutes to get started. Thank you for being so on time. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. We'll let more people filter in. As you're joining, if you're comfortable updating your name to include your affiliation if you have one, that just helps me and PSE know who is in the room. Welcome, welcome, everyone. We'll get started soon. Great. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. All right. Well, I say we can jump in, and then if we end 2 minutes early, we end 2 minutes early, although I doubt it with all this good material here. So my name is Sophie Glass. I am a facilitator with Triangle Associates. Thank you. I see the comment that perhaps the webinar platform is restrictive and you can't change your username. Perhaps it was just your registration name. So forgive me for not knowing my own platform. But welcome to your webinar on demand-side resources on November 15th. Thank you all so much for being here. You can go to the next slide, please, Emily. So this is a webinar format used frequently for kind of large format meetings, as these are intended to become. If you want to send a message to us, if you want to receive a message from us as hosts, you can click the chat. Otherwise, your way of communicating with the panelists and the presenters is through that Q&A feature. And so when a question is asked, we'll make a note of it, and then perhaps during a natural break in the presentation, we'll cover a lot of the Q&A. During the public comment period, that's where we really want to hear your voice. And so please raise your hand if you want to make a verbal comment at the end. And if you're someone who benefits from captions, we have those going as well. And thank you for I know the shift to the webinar, it's something to get used to, but from a facilitation standpoint, that Q&A feature really helps make sure that I don't miss any questions that could maybe have gotten lost in the chat before. So thank you for bearing with these changes. Next slide, please. My request is always just be constructive, courteous. These webinars were intended to reach a broader audience, to be a little bit more bite-sized, if you will. And so let's try to break down those acronyms and speak in plain language. We do have 90 minutes today. That's longer than some previous webinars, but we may not get to everything. And so that feedback forum is your place for additional input, etc. So Pauline, can you drop the feedback form link into the chat, please? Great. I just got an announce. Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? Very good. So after PSE does all of its presentation, that's when we'll hear your voice and we'll have some public comments. Next slide, please. As you all know, PSE starts all of its meetings with safety moments. And believe it or not, we need to get ready for winter. So check the tread on your tires if you have a car. Service your radiator and maintain antifreeze levels. Again, if you have access to a car or have your own car, and get an emergency kit in your vehicle if you have one. It's a good to-do list for me. So today's speakers, just big picture, this meeting was designed with some of the requests that PSE has heard from stakeholders in the past about wanting to hear more about demand-side resources. So PSE went out to its colleagues and grabbed these 5 presenters to come to you today. Mark Lenson, who will introduce himself, Patrick Weaver, Tom Smith, Heather Mulligan, and Leslie Wright. And when you all start your talk, presenters, you can just share a little bit about your title and your role. So next slide, please. So what are we going to do today for 90 minutes? We are going to define demand-side resources. Let's have kind of a level playing field of understanding about these topics. We'll discuss customer energy savings and importance in resource planning, learn about customer programs, including energy efficiency, demand response, customer generation options, and gather ideas about energy efficiency, demand response, and customer generation programs for PSE to study. And if Pauline, if you could drop in the chat the latest slide deck. So PSE made one update to its slide deck, one update, which is more of an interactive question for you at the end, as well as a resource for you to respond to. So trying to use these webinars to the extent possible to gather feedback. So thank you, Pauline, for dropping the latest link to the presentation with a new slide 32 that's going to solicit some of your feedback. Next slide, please. So here's our agenda. As I mentioned, Mark will open with customer energy management overview. We'll take a pause for Q&A after he speaks, so let the Q&A gather in that Q&A feature. We'll hear from Leslie and Patrick next about energy efficiency, followed by Tom with demand response, Heather with customer generation, and wrapping up with me with not only kind of an invitation to provide feedback on this one element that we'll share, but also public comment, really trying to have at least those 10 minutes, if not more. So then we'll get you out of here by 4:30. I'm gonna just peek here into the chat to make sure I'm not missing anything. Very good. Okay, very good. I think that covered all my pieces. I'm going to, next slide, please. All right, Mark, let's turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Sophie. So I'm Mark Linson, and I'm in our customer energy management group, which contains some, but not all of our demand-side resource programs. I manage our strategic planning, evaluation, and research team. So some of our main functions are evaluating our programs to ensure that they are delivering energy savings, if there's process improvement opportunities, or there's new ways of looking at how to deliver the programs. So very much in alignment with kind of the public feedback we are looking for from you guys today. So thank you. Next slide. All right, so what are demand side resources? The kind of the major categories that we're going to focus on today are energy efficiency and conservation. And why we say both of those is they're slightly different definitions. So conservation is kind of like you're putting on an aerator or a low flow shower head. So you're using less water, but you're not using water. Energy efficiency generally is tying back to the more efficient equipment, right? If I'm going to put in a product that's more efficient than the cheaper alternative, that's energy efficiency. Distributed generation is what you have on the screen there. It could be solar panels, could be other, wind and other things that people have on their homes or businesses. And finally, there's demand response, and that's where we're, as it described in the graphic there, is load shedding. So can customers reduce their loads to help mitigate peak consumption? And then I was going to mention one other thing and I just forgot. So, demand side resources, kind of a strange name. The demand side is really kind of looking at who's using or consuming the energy. So that's going to basically be customer homes and buildings. Okay, next slide. All right, just a second. Sorry, I have an 8-year-old yelling at me through the door, so I apologize for the interruption. So anyway, energy savings delivered. So what I wanted to provide just a little bit of context of how we've delivered energy savings over time. So this is brand new. We're not just starting this year. We've been doing it for years, and really actually before the 2007 timeframe as well. And so just over time, the ability to deliver energy savings fluctuates. Some of the challenges you might notice in the 2020 and 21 savings numbers was COVID, right? So different things do impact how much we can deliver, and so do codes and standards. One of those maybe more obvious ones to everyone are the switch over from incandescent lights to CFLs and then to LEDs. LEDs are pretty much the standard now, so we're generally not incentivizing those for, let's say, homes screw in LEDs, where back in the day those were a big program we were trying to promote and get those installed as everywhere we could. Next slide. And so you kind of might wonder, well, how do we determine how much we should do? How big should each of those bars be on the previous slide? Well, there's quite a process that we go through to kind of figure out, well, how much should we go after? And it all ties back into the IRP. So first we kind of look at there's basically 3 levels of energy efficiency potential and other demand side resource potential. The levels are technical potential, achievable technical potential, and finally you add the economic element to that. What's cost effective? I will note that there is a long measure list that has been posted to our site. Folks can take a look at that and see what we have in there. It might be some of the measure names might be confusing, but anyway, they're all there, so you can kind of see what we use to then figure out these kind of questions we have. So technical potential is looking at what are all the upgrades possible in the marketplace, right? If someone has a water heating system, then you may be able to have an efficient water heater option there. If they don't have any water heating systems, it wouldn't even be a technical potential measure or upgrade. It just wouldn't even exist. So that's kind of the base layer of potential we look at, is what's actually out there, what's possible. The next layer, actually, as you go up, we kind of start reducing potential as you go up the pyramid here. So even if an upgrade is free, for example, the achievable metric kind of says, look, not everyone's going to do it. Even when you pay for something at 100% of the cost, not everyone's going to do it. So that's one of the key reductions that happens when you move from technical to achievable. It's just you're never going to get 100% compliance. Kind of a pretty common factors like 85% based on some studies years ago, but basically trying to put a line in the sand saying you're never going to get 100%. You have some smaller number that you'd be able to achieve even at 100% program, paying that program premium. Finally, the economic kind of drives our targets. How much should our programs go get? That's where the IRP comes in. So the first 2 layers I just described really are the conservation potential assessment effort. And that's kind of a separate sidebar to the IRP. And we have separate consultants working on that to kind of determine how much could be done in our market, specific to our market. The economic effort basically takes all that, the output of that conservation potential assessment, and puts that into the IRP modeling. I'm not going to get into the details of how that works because I don't know either. But what the modeling does do is then say, how do I weigh all these different resources or measures or upgrades against other resources, right? Because as an electric utility, we need to figure out how do we meet this future need, and what are my options, and what may be most cost effective. Or at least least cost. There's different rules around that. But anyway, so what happens in the IRP is it then starts selecting, hey, I can go get this type of generation resource, or I can go get a bundle of energy efficiency, or maybe solar looks appealing. So the modeling efforts, and they run different scenarios as well, basically says what's the right mix of resources to most prudently deliver the energy we need, with other factors that are applied, such as customer benefit indicators and those kind of things. So it's not just a simple, one and done. There's iterations done and the scenarios performed that help us kind of quantify how big and how small different programs should be, and what's out there in the marketplace that we should be going after. I think do I have one more or not? Next slide. No. So anyway, Sophie, did you want to do questions now, or did we want to wait till later? Because this
let's
general
pause.
summary.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's pause for questions now. For those of you who are streaming on YouTube, just to recap what's in the chat, there were some questions about how many people are online today, 37 in the webinar, 13 on YouTube. And then there was a question about where could participants find the list that Mark mentioned. We dropped that in the chat. And for those of you who are streaming on YouTube, you can find that on PSE's IRP's website under today's meeting materials. Do other folks have questions for Mark with these kind of introductory slides focused on customer energy management. Okay, we have a question here in the chat. I'll read it aloud for Mark and others, which is from Don Marsh. When you are evaluating the cost of different demand response programs, are you also accounting for the cost of avoided emissions? Thoughts on that, Mark?
Yes. Yeah, so we do have the electric. I know this is focused on electric, but both for the electric and gas side of the business, we have avoided costs that we value. So if we're not delivering a kilowatt hour, if we're not delivering a therm to a customer because they did some kind of upgrade, there's a value provided. There's different components to that, which is kind of the next layer of details on that is, it's not just the energy provided, it's the carbon emissions and the system upgrades that we don't have to do, or the generation we don't have to acquire, or the Climate Commitment Act allowance cost that we have to that we bear in these auctions that we now are participating in. So it doesn't just look at the unit of energy that we deliver, it's kind of all the stuff behind the scenes as well. So that's one way we value or measure the value of various programs or upgrades is what are you avoiding?
Thanks for that, Mark. I see a raised hand. The way we have it structured is to really use the Q&A throughout the meeting itself. So I'm curious whether Joel would be willing to add his question to the Q&A feature. And if that's giving you a hard time, message, please let us know. You have my email address and otherwise, Joel. Any other questions? Any other questions in the Q&A? No. Looking here. Okay, well, you can always come back and, Mark will be with us for the duration of the meeting if you have any other questions. Oh, I see another one from Brian. Forgive me. Thanks. So Brian asked, do you have any way to account for a locational value of conservation measures, i.e. DR at the end of a feeder?
Yeah, say PSE would like to answer this question live.
Oh,
so
that just means you speak.
Okay, Mark. Good. I was like, I don't know what is that. Okay. So yes.
Just answer it, Mark. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, we are working towards that and having more locational specific value. And I would say there's what's been interesting this is still fairly new to us is how we evaluate where the locational value, both from a customer perspective, right? So we're looking at different equity lenses now with our programs. You could look at that from an avoided cost in what we would call a targeted area or a constrained area where there's system constraints that there's more value in not building that additional substation or that additional pipeline into this town if we do more work. So yes, there is specific locational benefits that we can tie to different programs or delivery of programs when there's one that we can quantify. At the end of the day, we have to be able to quantify it.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, so from Joel, thank you for using this format. For folks who are not familiar with cost effectiveness, cost avoided costs, etc., could you speak a little more about the top of the pyramid, slide 11? Emily, can you go back to slide 11, please? What goes into this economic evaluation? Whose perspective does it take?
Great question. So when the measures are evaluated in the conservation potential assessment, they have a bunch of data points tied to each measure. Those would include how much energy they save, what type of energy they save, different load types that they are, and the cost. And so that's kind of gets into this the economic question of if one upgrade, if you have two different upgrades that are deliver the same amount of energy, but one costs $1 and the other one costs $10, we're going to value those differently, assuming they last the same amount of time. And so in the model, we stack up in bundles the different energy efficiency measures in like costs. So the $1 example I have had would be on the left end of the scale, and maybe that $10 measure that delivers the same savings would be on the right end of that spectrum. And so we kind of have this series of bundles that get more and more expensive from a societal perspective and a customer perspective as well, to deploy as measures. And so what the IRP is doing is saying, hey, how am I going to select these how much of different resources am I going to select? And then how many resources, meaning like generation, but also how do I mix in energy efficiency or other types of demand side resources into that mix, because it's not just one option we're picking. So anyway, going back to that stack or the series of economic bundles, we'll go from left to right, if you will, picking the most cost-effective things first, and then as we need more conservation or demand side resources, it goes further and further up that stack into the more expensive measures, because comparatively it's better than building a new generation plant somewhere else. So that's kind of how the process works. And again, the avoided cost, going back to that, is tied into the cost of not delivering, or the benefit of not delivering that kilowatt hour to the customer. So there's savings tied back to the generation side, transmission, distribution, kind of the whole 9 yards from generation point to the customer. There are savings to the PSE and thus to the customers who pay their bills, that we don't have to acquire more infrastructure because we use a little bit less. So, and that's kind of the main theory around the economic part, is the value of those savings are kind of a series of measure groups, and then the modeling in the IRP then says, okay, how many of those bundles do I want? And normally there's like, let's say 1 to 13, 13 being the worst, 1 being the best. I'm going to pick 1, and then I'll pick 2, and then I'll pick 3, and so it goes through the modeling iterations to then say, how many should I end at before it's better off if I go build a solar array somewhere, or build a wind farm or whatever. So that's kind of high level how it works.
Great, thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Scanning, and I don't see any other open questions. So tell your 8-year-old thank you for their patience. My 5-year-old is homesick, and so I might have to do my own get out of the room moment. So thank you for that introductory, providing that common framework or baseline for us. And then we're going to turn it over to Leslie Wright. So Leslie, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. We can move to the next slide. But my name is Leslie Wright. I'm the manager of business energy management and customer energy management. So we would like to speak with you about energy efficiency, some programs that we have, just to update you kind of on what we're doing now, and then propose what we have planned for the next 2-year cycle that we plan in. So in energy efficiency, we support our customers to make energy choices, efficient energy choices, by providing education, opportunities, and incentives on energy efficiency products across nearly 36 services. We adapt our programs based on the customer needs, equipment updates, and industry changes. As I mentioned, we plan in 2-year cycles, so we have what's called bienniums. We just finished are finishing our 22-23 biennium, and have already planned for our 24 and 25 for that biennium. Plan the programs and services and rebates that we will provide. And then adjustments beyond that biennium, going into 2026, we will continue to focus on understanding and being on top of industry trends, code changes, regulation changes, new grants and funding opportunities, to continue to provide the best service we can to help our customers use energy efficiently and cleanly. So you can move to the next slide. So business energy management, which is my department, we have many different programs that I'll go over in the next slide. But basically, we work with commercial and industrial customers to evaluate energy efficiency projects, and to make recommendations for our projects, so that we can provide incentives for those commercial and industrial customers. We also have strategic energy management. So we have 2, and then there's 2 new ones coming along as well, programs where we will do site visits, have workshops, and work with our customers to understand what low and no cost changes that they can make to their operations and maintenance to be able to conserve energy. So you can move to the next slide. Okay, so for business energy management, as I mentioned, we work with commercial and industrial customers. So we have our commercial and industrial retrofit programs, which include custom grants where we cover up to 70% of equipment and installation costs for energy efficiency projects at 45 cents per kilowatt hour and $7 per therm. We have business lighting projects that are a part of commercial and industrial retrofit, where we will incentivize, again, up to 70% of total costs for business lighting changes. As Mark mentioned, LED is the standard now, so we are focusing more on providing controls measures, luminaire level lighting controls, like occupancy sensors and things like that for business lighting. For our industrial energy management program, we have a strategic energy management program that I was talking about, where we work with customers in cohorts to provide, as I mentioned, workshops, site visits that we like to call treasure hunts, where we'll go out to your site and help to identify opportunities for savings, and then just kind of be available to help customers and answer questions about different opportunities that those customers have to reduce their energy. And then we also have our system optimization program for industrial customers that helps to identify capital measures that can be taken. So new equipment purchases or equipment replacement and things like that, to again help to reduce energy consumption. And that's paid at the rate of 5 cents per kilowatt hour or 80 cents per therm of verified annual energy savings, up to 100% of the eligible implementation costs. We have commercial strategic energy management, which is a program that in and of itself, and then we have pay for performance, which is also an energy management program. But like ISEM, like the ISEM program that I was talking about, we work with customers in cohorts through like workshop knowledge, providing knowledge about different things that can be done, workshops, coaching, and site visits and walkthroughs. For the commercial strategic energy management program, the customer has to, there's certain requirements on usage that the customer has to meet in order to be able to qualify for that. So they have to use greater than 1 million kilowatt hours or 135,000 therms annually to be able to participate in that program. We have commercial industrial new construction, where we use energy use intensity factor performance method as a way to evaluate designs that we receive from developers, architects, to be able to make a determination on appliances or installations that go above minimum code requirements, so that we can incentivize based on the energy savings above code requirements. We have a large power user program where we work with customers of a particular rate class that where they use a lot of energy to basically evaluate the projects that they would like to do and then incentivize those as well. And then we have a lot of commercial rebate programs that are more prescriptive in nature. We have a small business direct install program, which is where we work with small to medium businesses to actually go out on site and perform an assessment. And if we see things like lighting changes that can be done while we're there, we'll actually make those changes while we're there. We have a commercial kitchen program, a lodging program, HVAC program, and also lighting to go for commercial rebates. So we really spend a lot of time and effort working with our commercial and industrial customers to help them use energy efficiently, to educate them about their options, and just be their partner in their journey of energy efficiency and conservation. So those are my slides. I believe Patrick was coming on next. There he is, to talk to us about residential energy management. So I'll turn it over to him, and then maybe we can both answer questions at the end.
Okay, we'll wait till the end then. That sounds good. Thanks so much, Leslie. Go ahead, Patrick.
All right. Hi, everyone. Patrick Weaver, Manager for Residential Energy Management and Rebates. I get to guide the teams that design and implement our residentially focused efficiency programs. So as you can see there, we're helping customers through energy saving behaviors and adoption of more efficient products. We work really closely and partner with customers, equipment installers, equipment sellers, all to increase the use of efficient products and help customers improve the comfort of their homes, while also saving energy and managing their use. What exactly this means, we'll show in a minute, all the slides, but before we get there, I thought I may share an example or two of what these customer experiences look like. Some of you may have shared them yourselves as you've gone through. For example, in your local hardware store, you may have seen signage with PSE stickers on them that help highlight which appliances are energy efficient and where you can qualify for a PSE rebate. If you live in an apartment building, you noticed it's no longer as drafty as it once was. Maybe it's because of some rebates where we partnered with property manager to help them upgrade the efficiency or windows, insulation, and air sealing of that building. If your water heater started leaking and all of a sudden you no longer had hot water, it could be because of our programs with distributors and equipment sellers that they had an efficient product on their truck ready to go for you to choose and have installed in your home. So those are a couple of the examples of the type of programs and experiences we're trying to design for customers to help improve efficiency. Let's head to the next slide to see the specifics. Much like Leslie shared, we've got a variety of programs we're running, about a dozen of them currently. We won't go through line by line on this, but we've got a couple of programs in different buckets. So you'll notice that we've got programs that help customers in their rental unit. We've got programs for property managers of multifamily housing. We've got programs for home builders, whether single family or multifamily. Lots of programs for homeowners, and then a variety of educational tools regardless of a customer's housing type. You'll note a few spots on here to advance our equity goals. We're really focused on helping customers save energy wherever they are in their ability, and particularly customers who maybe haven't reached as much before. So we're partnering with our customers in highly impacted communities and vulnerable populations. We appreciate that the cost of these upgrades can be a significant barrier for customers. And so our rebates help buy down that cost. Even with some of those rebates, we recognize customers may be challenged to adopt these. So in a couple of programs, we offer increased incentives for customers. You can see a few of them flagged here. On multifamily new construction and existing programs, we have increased incentives for income qualified and in vulnerable populations and highly impacted communities. Our weatherization assistance program is a completely free set of home upgrades for income qualified customers. And in the light teal box, you'll see their efficiency boost offers higher incentives for our moderate income customers on a variety of programs. We also offer a variety of tools and resources. We'll walk through a couple of specifics on the next slides. We'll go relatively quickly since time's limited. Let's head to the next slide. As customers are trying to adopt different efficiency products, we recognize they may need some support along the way. We have our energy advisors available for phone and email support to help provide personalized tips and feedback for customers to help them through their journey. We've also got a trade ally network, including recommended energy professionals. These are licensed, bonded, insured, and trained contractors who can help customers assess what solutions are best for their homes and get efficient, high-quality equipment installed well for them. Customers can get referrals to recommended energy professionals, And our full Trade Ally network can provide instant incentives for residential customers that reduces paperwork for the customers and reduces the out-of-pocket cost for them. Let's head to the next slide. We're always adapting our experiences. Our PSE marketplace is perhaps a good example of that. For years, we've had rebates for smart thermostats. Customers would buy a smart thermostat, mail in some information or submit some online forms for us, and then we'd mail a check. A couple of years after that, we're able to start offering credits on a customer's bill instead of a mailed check. Then we started a PSE marketplace where customers could quickly validate that they're a PSE customer and get an instant rebate on our marketplace, skipping a bunch of paperwork and skipping those out-of-pocket costs. We're continuing to evolve this. We're working on the next iteration of our marketplace. Smart thermostats, for example, will enable customers to participate in demand response programs that you'll hear about in a minute from Tom. When customers go on the marketplace, they'll be able to get the rebate for a smart thermostat, and we'll sign them up for demand response programs at the point of sale, saving additional steps for customers. So some of the items in the works. Let's head next to describing some of the perhaps missing a slide. And if we did, that's okay. Yeah, okay, then I'll just briefly speak to it. The online marketplace is one of the digital tools that provides rebates for customers through the marketplace. We've also got a variety of educational tools through our online website where customers can get personalized tips, view their energy usage, and we send out a variety of either alerts or emails. So even if customers don't have to upgrade equipment in their home or aren't able to, we're providing a variety of tips to help customers make energy efficient choices. In the interest of time, I think I'll pause there I think we're headed to Mark next and then do Q&A, Sophie. Is that right?
No. Let's do Q&A now, but if you want to jump 1 or 2 slides ahead, maybe that's where your missing slide went. One more, please, Emily. Was this the one you wanted to speak to, Patrick?
Yep. So I already covered that. I don't think we
You
need
did?
to
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so let's take a pause now for Q&A before we talk about demand response. I feel like over the last year or two of these IRP stakeholders meetings, I've heard a number of folks really want more information about these energy efficiency programs. So I hope both those folks are on today listening to this. I'm looking in the Q&A to see any questions. I see one from Rosemary. Rosemary asks, I've received an email about joining a Flex program, but I can't find any information about this on the website. Patrick, do you think that after either you can speak to it now or one of your colleagues can just post something in the Q&A for Rosemary and others?
Yeah, I think we could do that. And I think Tom is going to address that perhaps as well in the next section here.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Thank you for that. So just stay tuned. We'll have an answer in there. Other questions? While people are thinking, okay, so Don has a lot of observations about residential programs, but it's difficult to type them all. So he'll wait for the comments at the end. So vehicle to grid, I think is V2G, virtual power plant, VPP, TVR, you stumped me on that one, residential batteries and heat pump water heaters. So Don, we look forward to hearing you during that during the comments at the end, and as well as the feedback form. As you know, you can write as much as you want in those pieces. Great. And thank you. In the chat, Pauline has dropped the Flex program piece there. So the next question comes from Rosemary. Rosemary asks, why can't community solar customers be eligible for 100% rebates?
Let's save that one for the renewable section coming up that Heather's going to cover.
Okay.
I promise I'm not trying to dodge all the questions, but I think we might cover some of these in the future.
That's great. At least, the participants have an understanding of where you're going. So it seems like their minds are where you are. Very good. So other things just to show in the chat in case folks viewing on the live stream, we've just been posting various things that were referenced in the slide deck. There's also a guide here that I'm going to post on behalf of Leslie in a moment, a link there around rebates. While I did that, I see a question come in from Thomas. How can homeowners and business owners apply to participate in the trial electrification program?
I can answer that one.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, so we have a targeted electrification pilot going now. That was a result of the latest rate case. And right now, customers can apply online or I think through contractors. If they convert from a gas furnace to a heat pump, there's a rebate for that. There's also a rebate that we have available for folks that either put in a furnace recently and just want to add a heat pump for heating and cooling. There's also a rebate for that right now. So both of those options are available for customers. The hybrid one I just mentioned isn't to the target electrification pilot, but that's neither here nor there. We also have some low income programs where we've included in the pilot. We're working with our low income weatherization program, so that's offered by our different agencies around the region, around the Puget Sound. And so as they're doing home weatherization, so that's repairs, weatherization, insulation, all those things, rather than just buy a new heat pump for or a gas furnace for a gas heated customer for a short time through the pilot, we're offering the ability for those agencies to purvey a heat pump instead of a furnace. So that's an option for low income customers. I hope that answers the question. We're doing very little work on the commercial side for the pilot. We may look at a couple of multifamily buildings and maybe some small businesses that, again, need to be in some of our targeted areas that we've called out in that pilot.
Great. Thank you for that, Mark. And thank you for the questions, Thomas and Rosemary. I don't remember having that much back and forth with the two of you before, so it's really nice to hear some of your questions and connect with you this way. Looking in the Q&A, I see a question from Don. So Don has a question about, TVR, time varying rates. Don, that's what it is. So can customers request to be included in your time varying rates pilot program? And Don would love to participate in that. Who'd like to take that one?
That's one I'm not able to answer on the fly, so I'll have to, unless someone else can answer it right now, I'll have to get back to you on that, Don. Thanks for the question.
Yeah. I'll pause for one moment. I don't know if anyone else on the PSE team, I'm looking around the room, has an answer for that at this moment. So that might be a good feedback report item. And Don, thank you for that question. Patrick and our team will flag that for the feedback report. I'm seeing us do that right now. Very good. Okay, other questions? Looking here. We're making good time. We're right on schedule. So how about this? We'll go to the next slide and let Tom take over with some demand response conversation or some demand response information. And if you have other questions on what Leslie or Patrick spoke about, it's never too late. So Tom, please come off of mute and give it a go.
Hey, thanks. Afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here. Thanks for joining us. My name is Tom Smith. I'm a product development manager in the customer energy management department. And I get to spearhead the demand response portfolio coming online for our residential side. I'll also be talking a little bit about our activity on the business demand response side of our efforts. So looking forward to getting into it. Let's dive in. What is demand response? Number one question we get. Basically, the short version is demand response is how we meet heightened demand during high use periods. So typically during really hot or cold days, we see an increase in energy usage. And what that means is we need to account for that. So we pull various levers to make sure that we can actually meet demand in the form of automated demand response or behavioral demand response or a mix of the two. So we've rolled out a few different customer programs for our residential and business customers to help them participate in alleviating demand on the grid while also benefiting from things like incentives and increased grid resiliency. So there are a few different types of demand response programs that I mentioned there. There's automated demand response, behavioral demand response, business demand response. And we're gonna get into all of that in the next slide. Cool. So there's a lot of things here, and we'll go bottom up so everybody feels comfortable with all this information. So way back in 2022, we got through our shortlist and contracting for the DER RFP that was able to enable a lot of our demand response work that's now spooling up. As some of you may have seen on this call, just this week, we did our marketing launch for our demand response programs, Flex Smart and Flex Rewards. And for some of you on the call, you probably saw some more targeted outreach for our business demand response program. So all the way back in August of this year, we did our first behavioral demand response program called Flex Events. That's our opt-out program. We have in the winter around 200,000 customers, and in the summer, 500,000 customers participating in that. And then very recently, we expanded our Flex Smart program, which is our automated demand response platform, which really just means it's device-based, right? So think about your thermostats, your water heaters, EVs, that sort of a thing. Basically, we see high demand, we press a big red button in the system operations room that says demand response, and then we communicate to those different types of devices to help either raise or lower the temperature of your heating values for those types of distributed energy resources in order to reduce the energy usage. So right now that is thermostats, and next year it'll be all the other distributed energy resources that I mentioned. This week, we also launched our Flex Rewards program, which I think is really cool. It's an incentivized opt-in behavioral demand response program. People can go in through our platform called Flex Saver, provide some basic information like their email and phone number, and get notifications when a demand response event occurs. There's enrollment incentives and there's energy reduction incentives on top of that. So it's a really cool way to participate and contribute to the greater good without having a fancy smart thermostat or one of those other DERs, distributed energy resources, that I mentioned. We also launched as I said earlier, our business demand response program on the 7th. We've been doing targeted recruitment and getting positive feedback from that. And then looking forward at the beginning and middle of next year, we're going to be involving electric vehicle charging equipment and telematics as a way to increase our megawatt capacity capabilities. And then in Q2, we'll be looking at including water heaters, both through CTA 2045 modules and direct relationships with our water heater manufacturers. And I know the question will come up, what is a CTA 2045 module? After the first of this year, every single electric water heater is going to have a little port on it. It's called an eco port. Some manufacturers, by the likes of Skycentrics, make little ports or modules that plug into that port, and it enables the water heater to communicate with platforms like what we've created, the virtual power plant, which is the thing that all of these things you see on the screen communicate with in order to dispatch our demand response resources. So for every line item that you see in here, we are actually dispatching our demand response programs through the virtual power plant, which is really cool. That was a lot of information. So I'm going to take a second to reset, let people absorb before we go to the next slide. But we'll be getting into a little bit more about the programmatic details in the coming slides. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions right now. One thing I will say is all of these programs are voluntary. We're never going to force you to participate in one of these things. If we send demand response signals to a thermostat or a water heater, you can overwrite it. There's no penalty for that. It's our way of saying, hey, we aren't trying to force you to do anything. We're just trying to ask you to join us on this journey. So I hope that maybe alleviates some tension that I think that I kind of get a lot of questions about whenever I'm talking to customers and about how the programs work. So with that, Sophie, I think you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say you are correct. People do have questions. So let's take a moment here. Let's start on slide 24. Don has a question asking is about one of those flex programs, a new name for time varying rates. Can you just define?
Yeah, totally. It is not. Time varying rates is another name for time of use. And the time of use pilot that we have right now breaks into two different types. It's a standard time of use where you'll have different rates at different times. And then there's another one called peak time rebates, Anybody who participates in peak time rebates could participate in our demand response programs if they wanted to, but because of the parameters of the pilot that's underway, you can either participate in peak time rebates or in demand response. It's your choice what you want to participate in. You can even participate in time of use and demand response as long as it's not specifically peak time rebates. So we're really trying to make sure that customer choice is at the forefront of how we're rolling these programs out. You can play in both realms if you want. No one's going to stop you.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Joel has a question, same slide. How do customer-cited batteries fit into the rollout timeline? And are those part of the FlexSmart program? Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, no, great question, Joel. Thanks. So we got an updated timeline for residential batteries. It's looking like April right now. It is going to integrate with the virtual power plant. It's going to be a part of the overall portfolio. We're in the process of defining exactly how the customer journey looks for that. And we're really looking forward to getting more information on that. But right now we know when it's targeted to happen. And we definitely know that we're going to be leveraging the VPP and the overall demand response infrastructure that we've developed over the past year and a half to utilize batteries as a resource at the residential level.
Thanks for that, Tom. Last question here in our stack from Rosemary about, can we override PSE's temperature reduction or increase it if one signs up to a program where PSE changes one's temperature from afar?
Yeah, 100%. So Rosemary, that's a really important question. I'm glad you asked it. So the short answer is yes. There's always a longer answer, right? But I'll try and keep it brief. So temperature set points for demand response can vary depending on the manufacturer, right? Google has a very specific, or sorry, Nest has a very specific set point. Ecobee lets the customer choose their set points. Sanope and Misa also let customers choose set points. It can really vary based off of the OEM. So what we say is most of the time you get to choose exactly what the temperatures are when there isn't a demand response event happening and when there is a demand response happening. Beyond that, you also have the ability to just say, like, you know what? I'm really cold. It needs to be warmer in here. I'm going to change the temperature. And that's okay.
Yeah. You're reading my mind. It is very cold where I am. And so I would like to change our temperature in this room. So we have another question here. Brian is asking if Brian has residential batteries and solar, can they also do vehicle to grid? Tom?
Well, I think that's a really good question. We're planning on exploring our vehicle to grid and integrated options for multiple DERs in that space in 2024. Right now, I can't answer that question. But what I can say is we're taking a no customer left behind approach to this. So we are designing these programs with the thought in mind that in a future state, there's going to be a lot of customers out there that have multiple types of DERs that need to work with each other in order to achieve our goals. So I know that's not exactly the type of information you were looking for right now, but what I can say is we're looking at it.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot about vehicle to grid because there's another question coming in here. Polestar just announced that their new EV models will include vehicle to grid capability, and they'll even roll out their own virtual power plant VPP software. Is PSE anticipating any vehicle to grid support?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. 2024 is going to be a big year for us looking into our options for vehicle to grid. We definitely have plans. And you know how Polestar and all of the EV OEMs that claim vehicle to grid capabilities are going to be analyzed thoroughly to see what their feasibility is for plugging into a more developed virtual power plant that we have in this service territory.
Yeah. Can you define OEM for me?
I am so sorry.
You're fine.
Yes, I can. I thought I did so well not using too many acronyms. OEM just means original equipment manufacturer. So when I say like Nest, Ecobee, Polestar, right? Those are OEMs. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. That was truly just a Sophie question. Okay, looking here, no other open questions. I know you have two other demand response slides. So let's do those and then pause again. So go ahead, Tom.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks. And thanks for the questions. They're really great. So people always ask why, what's in it for me? Why are we doing this? What's the goal? there's a few different answers to that. So for the end use customer, we make sure that you get an incentive, a financial reward for enrolling, for staying enrolled. So on a seasonal basis, you can get additional financial incentives. Depending on the program, for example, Flex Rewards, our incentivized behavioral demand response program, you get additional funds for participating in the program on an event by event basis. We do $1 per kilowatt hour of avoided usage. And then I kind of just tease this, but the types of rewards can be program and DER dependent. Some will just be, hey, you enrolled and you're remaining enrolled. Here's some money. Thank you. Others will be, hey, you're enrolled, you're staying enrolled, but you're also adjusting your energy usage to ensure that you benefit from it financially, and PSE can benefit from it from a megawatt capacity standpoint. Of course, energy savings is a big deal, right? We're talking about conservation. So by participating and reducing your energy usage, adjusting your behavior, and automating reduction, we're going to use less energy, which is a really big deal, core to our conservation goals. And then finally, I think this is something that is a dual benefit, definitely, that we're all keenly aware of and focused on over the next few years as we start to inject more clean energy into our grid, is resiliency. So if we're able to balance demand with healthy mixture of residential and business, automated and behavioral demand response options, then it helps us balance the demand across all the customer segments to make sure we get reliable, safe energy delivery. I don't know if I ran that or not. Do we want to do questions? I can go to the next slide and then we can open it up.
We have one here and we're making good time. So Brian is asking, have you considered demand flexibility above and beyond demand response to reduce carbon emissions?
I think something that's at the core of all conservation measures is an end result of a reduction of carbon emissions. I know that Mark touched on this pretty extensively earlier, and I don't want to overstep on anything he's already spoken about. But I think one of the end results that's unavoidable of demand response is because we're using less energy, it will equal lowered carbon emissions. However, and I don't want to go through repeating everything Mark said, there are a lot of measures to analyze when it comes to assessing what carbon reduction looks like from a demand response standpoint. There isn't a silo for demand response when it comes to how energy efficiency as a whole is judged or analyzed by reduction of carbon emissions. So what I can say is yes, we want to look at it and we are looking at it, but we are under the same sort of, not constraints, but analysis options for that as the rest of customer energy management.
Great. One more question here, and then we'll let you do your last slide.
Yeah.
So Chris is wondering whether PSE's program favor big users and not rewarding people who have been saving energy all along.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. People who still have been conservation champions, if we want to use that term, they'll still benefit from participating in demand response, whether it's behavioral or an automated demand response program. Of course, when you look at a large commercial complex versus a residential household, there's a very large difference in the amount of energy you're using, right? So that's something to be aware of. But what I will say is anybody who participates in these programs has something to gain. There's always a benefit there for it. And at the base level, that benefit is going to be financial reward. And then after that, we get the other benefits, right? Conservation, reduced carbon emissions, grid resiliency. So nobody gets left behind, right? And regardless of who's participating, how or where, there's a way for people to benefit.
Great. All right, Tom, let's do your next slide.
Yeah, cool. Cool. Okay, so I saw this question pop up, and I think it was from Rosemary earlier about how do I get to the webpage and enroll. So right now, you can go to pse.com/flexsmart or pse.com/flexrewards to learn about and enroll in our automated demand response, so thermostats, or our behavioral demand response, so no device, respectively, right? So I would urge and encourage everybody here to go to those websites, check them out, learn more. We're really proud of the work we've done, and we think that if you take some time to learn about it and participate, you'll like it too. And I did cover this earlier, but later, EVs, EV chargers, water heaters, batteries, it's all coming. And it's all coming very soon, within the first half of 2024. So we're all hard at work over here. The other way that you can enroll outside of the website is directly through manufacturer apps, that OEM thing that I kept mentioning earlier, and their websites. So you could go into your Ecobee app, and if you have an Ecobee thermostat, you could go into your Ecobee app, go to Eco Plus, and it would say, hey, you're a PSE customer. That's really cool. Let's sign up for demand response. Or if you're a Nest user, you could go to Nest's login website and say, hey, I'm a PSE customer. I want to enroll in demand response. It does vary by original equipment manufacturer, right? So the journey's a little bit different for each thermostat, or eventually EVs, water heaters, et cetera. But we've actually got a really thorough FAQ and customer journey outline in our program websites that can help you with that journey of signing up. So I'd really, again, encourage you to get into those websites and learn more. And if you have more questions, reach out, because we're all really excited about this, and we want to help you participate in the program. Finally, requirements are pretty straightforward for participation. You have to be a PSE electric customer. You need an AMI smart meter and compatible demand response equipment. So what does that last bullet mean? Kind of been going over this. Smart thermostats, connected baseboard heater thermostats, and then, one day, very, very soon, the EVs, chargers, water heaters, and batteries I mentioned. Now, there's a large list of equipment manufacturers that are compatible with our program. So I am going to plug one more time. Go check out pse.com/flexsmart, because we have the list of all compatible thermostats and OEMs that are available for the program today. It's quite a few: Nest, Ecobee, Honeywell, Amazon, Sensei, Misa, Sinope. It's comprehensive. Hard to find a thermostat that isn't compatible, unless it's like a proprietary Linux or something like that. And we're working on that. If you do have a smart thermostat or a thermostat connected to like a ductless heat pump system, you can still totally enroll in Flex Rewards and still benefit and sign up and contribute, participate, do your part to help us achieve that clean energy future. So yeah, that was the end of my slides, but
Yeah.
I'm sure more people have questions. So let's have it. Yeah.
Sure. So Tom, I just want to acknowledge that you answered one question that was asked earlier on in the chat that we said we'd get to. There's another one about community solar investor. That's going to be answered next by Heather. So we're keeping track of those. You answered a lot of questions throughout. I'm not seeing any open questions at the moment, but I'll just pause to see if anything has come to mind.
I'll stall for the folks who are trying to think of a question or typing right now. If you do have questions, our program team really does want to answer them and help you get up to speed on the programs. Reach out to us at flex@pse.com. We have a full staff ready and able to help you.
Great. That was a very productive stall. I'm going to encourage us to move along, because I need that 4:20 p.m. hard stop for the public comment. So Heather, thanks so much, Tom, for all of your question answering and all the rest. Heather, do you want to come off of mute?
Absolutely. Well, good afternoon. I'm Heather Mulligan. I'm the manager of our Customer Clean Energy Solutions team here at PSE. That means that I get to guide the team who is helping our customers with solutions towards their sustainability goals around renewable energy and electric vehicle transportation. And so that's, I'm not going to be talking about the electric vehicle work today, but I am going to be talking about the customer renewables work specifically. So next slide, please. So I want to start off by talking about customer-connected renewables. So you've heard a lot about energy efficiency and demand response, but customer generation is also a demand-side resource, and we are seeing incredible interest by our customers in customer generation. Since the program first became available, where customers could interconnect a rooftop solar project in the late 1990s, we have seen it grow exponentially in the last 10 years, especially. And so we now have over 20,000 customers participating in what we call our net metering program. Net metering allows customers to receive kilowatt hour credits on their bill for energy returned to the grid. So think about times where they might be out of the house during the day, or maybe it's a long summer month and they're producing more energy from their system than what they're consuming at home. So they receive credits for that on their bill, and then they can use those credits at times when they're actually consuming more than what their system is generating. For instance, in the evenings after the sun has gone down, or in the shorter winter months. And I apologize, my cat I knew she would do this to me. I fed her before this meeting just to try to keep her off my lap. So that's basically what net metering is. And we try to support our customers who install solar by not just providing that net metering benefit on their bill, but also by providing them with access to qualified installers through the Trade Ally network that you heard about earlier from Patrick. So that's another benefit, that customers can reach out through our energy advisors and request the names of local installers who can help them with that installation. And then, of course, we want to make sure that solar is safely interconnected to our system. With that, we have about 500 customers who are adding solar to their homes or businesses every month. And we will end this year with about 180 megawatts of new customer generation. And just to put that in perspective, it's roughly equivalent to a large-scale wind farm on the east side of the mountains. So pretty significant contribution from those customers. Next slide, please. But it doesn't end with net metering. We are trying to expand our offerings of what we call distributed energy resources. That's what the DER here stands for. So we continue to work with small power producers, for instance, dairy farmers who might be putting in what they call a dairy digester system to supply energy to our grid. And we also launched our community solar program back in 2021. We currently have 6 projects in that program representing 15.8 megawatts of new generation. Those projects are located in Olympia, Bonnie Lake, Issaquah, and there are 3 projects east of the mountains in Ellensburg, with plans to install another 6 in 2024 and a whole bunch more by the end of 2025 to hopefully bring us to 50 megawatts of community solar. Right now, of the community solar that we have available, it's about 10,800 shares. And when we fully build it out, it will be over 30,000 shares that customers can participate in. And I'll spend a few minutes talking about that a little bit more on the next slide. But before I move on to that next slide, I wanted to talk about 2 new product offerings that were just approved by the Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission for us to offer in the coming year. The first is the solar purchase rate. Net metering is allowed for customers to install projects up to 100 kilowatts, and that's a state-governed program. Our solar purchase rate will allow us actually to fill a gap and support customers who are putting solar on their commercial business, or it might be a government roof or a school. Projects that are typically not utility scale, large, still rooftop, but larger in size and serving an on-site load. Those projects will continue to meet that on-site load as much as possible, but when they do put power back onto the grid, they will see credits on their bill for that generation that's exported to the PSE system during those times. The other program that I wanted to mention was our residential battery program. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because you just heard about that from Tom. But we are very excited about that residential battery program. And as he mentioned, that will feed into the demand response program. But the idea there being that we're going to support customers who want to add either batteries to their solar project, or maybe it will be a standalone battery. And we're also looking at having additional incentives for customers who are in our highly impacted communities and vulnerable populations, where they can receive up to $10,000 to pay for the cost of that battery in their home. And also looking at additional or partial incentives for customers who may qualify for resiliency benefits, where maybe they have a higher percentage of outages and the battery can help support them through those outages. But again, the battery in those cases often sits there for long periods of time, waiting for that outage, but it could also benefit our system through demand response in the interim. So there's a nice connection there. So with that, let me share a little bit more about community solar, because I know there's some interest, and I'll try to get to the question that was asked about that as well. But if you could move to the next slide, please. So community solar, as I mentioned, is really designed to put projects on schools, municipal buildings, or maybe even private land, and have those benefit the participants of who choose to enroll in those projects. Each share is 1.46 kilowatts. And participants enroll for one or more shares, and then they receive the benefits on their bill of the energy generated by their share of that project that they enrolled in. 30% of that program is actually set aside for our income eligible customers. Those customers are able to enroll in up to 2 shares for no cost. And they will receive only benefit on their bill from that, from their share of that solar. And that's really made possible by the contributions of some state and federal funds that help us to cover the cost of those shares, or cover the cost of that build out of that portion of the program for those customers. But it allows us to really reduce the energy burden for those income eligible participants. And the nice thing about community solar is it does allow customers who might not own their home or live in an apartment or a condo to benefit from solar right there in their community. So with that, I would be happy to open it up for questions. I know we're on a tight timeline, so I want to make sure you can stick with it, Sophie.
Everyone has done really great sticking with our time frame. So Emily, will you go back to slide 28? That's where our first question is. So in slide 28, Don writes, the chart on this slide is encouraging, but he expects solar will get an even bigger bump due to incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act. Is PSE anticipating that? How much more solar generation do you expect in the next few years? Also, I would expect our own Clean Energy Transformation Act would encourage more solar. There's a lot here. I'm curious what PSE is able to answer now versus kind of thinking about it and putting it in the feedback report. Heather, want to give it a go, or anyone else?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that Dawn is absolutely correct that we are going to see a lot more solar. Currently, the federal government is offering a 30% tax credit for the installation of solar. And so, we know that lots of customers are interested in taking advantage of those benefits. And in terms of growth, we are expecting to see roughly 30 megawatts of new solar added each year for the next couple of years at least. So I would say by the end of 2025, somewhere in the range of roughly 60 megawatts of new solar will be added if we continue on current trends. As I said, we're adding about 3 to 4 megawatts each month right now.
Those numbers were just at your fingertips. Thank you, Heather, for that.
Every day.
This is what you do. So then Rosemary asks about, don't digesters produce methane, which is susceptible to large methane leaks? Thoughts on that, Heather?
So the nice thing about dairy digesters is that they actually capture the methane and they convert it into carbon, which helps to then generates energy. So we're actually destroying the methane before it can be put into the atmosphere and then creating energy out of it. So otherwise that manure tends to sit in a manure pond, just releasing that methane into the air. Whereas if it's in a digester, it is actually running through a generator. So I won't say there aren't any emissions with a dairy digester. There are some, certainly, but there are far fewer emissions when you have a dairy digester than when you just allow that manure to produce the methane as it will.
Great. Thanks, Heather. We'll go down the list in the order that people ask questions. So Rosemary also asked, why does PSE expect customers to invest in community solar rather than PSE simply provide the solar energy as part of its electricity provision? Thoughts on that, Heather?
I would say that it's both. I would say PSE is investing certainly in all types of renewable energy, both wind and solar, and of course hydro, to meet our goals. But community solar is something we heard from customers that they want. They want the ability to invest in solar in their communities and to see the benefits of that solar on their bill. And so this is really designed to make that possible. And as I said, and also to share the benefits for our income eligible customers where they can see bill reductions passed along to them.
Great. I am going to jump around a little bit just in case someone hasn't had a chance to ask a question yet. And I'm seeing a new question from Katie. Katie is asking, what does the outreach for community solar projects look like, particularly for income eligible folks? How do people enroll in community solar?
It's a great question, and I appreciate you asking that. There's a number of things happening. First of all, we do try to go to events when a new project has been launched or where new shares are available. We have a new project that we are starting enrollment in right now, actually, one of the East Side projects. And one of the things we've done is to try to translate our materials into Spanish so that we can reach a higher number of our Spanish-speaking customers and inform them of the availability of this product. But we also do send emails. We have sent flyers through the mail because we recognize that not everybody has access to email, actually. And again, trying to show up at events or where we think our customers who would be eligible for this program might be to reach them where they're at.
Great. Thanks so much, Heather, for that. Scrolling, lots of good questions in our last 3 minutes here. Brian is asking, have you considered expanding the single-family battery storage program to vehicle to grid, or is that 2 years too early?
So I think Tom mentioned vehicle to grid is most definitely on our roadmap and something that we are paying very close attention to. We just aren't quite there yet. We're still learning a lot about this space and about how our customers feel about enrolling their vehicle in a product like this. But I would agree, Brian, that this is something worth keeping an eye on, and that it most definitely will be something we work to launch and partner with our customers on in the future.
Great. Thanks, Heather. So in our last minute or so here, Virginia, I'm going to read your questions aloud. It's my understanding that some of the PSE folks who have an understanding of this legislation aren't here to answer the question, but I want everyone in the virtual room to be able to hear what the question is so that they can see it on the feedback report. So Virginia writes, PSE is approaching the amount of energy they are legally required to support from homeowners installing solar panels on their properties. I've heard that PSE plans to voluntarily accept participation above the minimum legal level requirement and maintain net metering, which I am glad to hear. I understand that HB 1427 was proposed last session and will be reintroduced in 2024 to ensure that this happens. Does PSE support this legislation? What is PSE doing to expand net metering of solar? So thanks, Virginia. One of the PSE colleagues will be looped in on that feedback report. And then your other point here says, I applaud your projections to host local community solar projects. Communities such as Vashon or Bainbridge want to create local community solar projects that are run through PSE, but I understand this is currently not readily available as a legal option. Community solar is one puzzle piece that can help reduce global warming, help underserved populations, including low-income households. Is what PSE is proposing currently consistent with state regulations or modifications needed? House Bill 1509, a bill to facilitate community solar, was introduced last session, and a version will be reintroduced. So 2 questions about this, and then we'll move to public comment. Does PSE currently proposes need such legislation to pass? Explain. Is PSE likely to support legislation that is being considered by the legislature in 2024 that could, as I understand it, allow more community solar to be implemented? Please explain. All
Sophie,
right.
can I take a quick stab at answering some of that quickly?
I
do you want to move on?
You want to move on? Yes, I really just because we don't allow to speak this whole time. So forgive me, Heather, on that.
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay. So we are going to shift because I know some PSE folks have to jump at 4:30. And I see, thank you for modeling this. So if you want to take down the slides, Emily, that would be great. If you want to make public comments, please raise your hand and we'll take everyone in the order in which they are here. I'm terrible at mentally capturing time, so we're going to use a timer. And yeah, let me promote you, Dawn, to be able to talk. And thank you, Dawn, for your patience. I know that you earlier on had some thoughts and you waited. So let me. Oh my, Pauline, can you promote Dawn? My yes. Now that I'm sharing my screen, it's not happy with me.
Can you hear me?
Sure can. Hi, Dawn. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so some of the things that I wanted to say were actually covered, but I still have a whole bunch that I want to say. So I was a little disappointed that we didn't hear a little bit more about the time of use pilot program, and hopefully that will become a real program. The reason is that is probably one of the biggest demand response programs that PSE will have, and so it would be nice to hear a little bit more about that. People are interested in like what the rate structure is on time of use and how it all works. And it seems like that was a missed opportunity to talk about, a very meaningful program for demand response. As far as residential batteries go, I want to heartily endorse what Heather Mulligan said about residential batteries. I installed 2 Tesla Powerwalls in August of last year, and it has prevented my family from experiencing 14 power outages since they were installed. But even though that's really cool, the rest of the time the batteries are not really doing much to contribute to the grid, and they really could. So I'm very excited to be able to contribute this capacity to the grid, and I'm looking forward to that happening soon. Finally, I just wanted to say something about heat pump hot water heaters. I've just had one installed. This is really an amazing technology. Super quiet. You can't hear it at all inside the house. Outside, there's a very quiet fan that runs. The size of the tank is smaller than a normal water heater, and this is going to be super efficient. And I feel like PSE could help educate and incentivize people switching to heat pump hot water heaters. Really cool stuff.
Great. Thank you so much, Don. I appreciate that. I think we got to all your questions, but after these meetings, we go through that Q&A with a fine-tooth comb. And if we happen to miss one, maybe one about solar, we will answer them in the feedback report. So, okay, let's see. I see Thomas's hand. Pauline, would you mind promoting Thomas?
Hello, can you hear me?
Sure can, Thomas. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Electrification is the most effective way to
Oh, Thomas, you just cut off. You want to?
reduce gas demand. The 2023 gas utility, oh, I'm sorry. The electrification is the most effective way to reduce gas demand. The 2023 gas utility IRP evaluated electrification as a demand-side resource, but it was not included in the preferred portfolio because it was deemed not cost-effective. This result was surprising since several studies have shown conversion from fossil gas to renewable electricity to be highly cost-effective. Also, the cost-effectiveness calculation included some flawed assumptions, particularly about the social costs of greenhouse gases. The cost-effectiveness of electrification should be reevaluated for the 2025 gas IRP, which should be closely integrated with other electrical system upgrades for handling additional EVs, distributed energy, etc. There are a number of drivers for upgrading the electrical system, and the upgrade costs should be allocated accordingly. Largely because the electrification was not included, the preferred portfolio of gas resources could not meet the Climate Commitment Act targets of 45% greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2050. For this reason, the gas IRP shows PSE purchasing large and increasing amounts of allowances through 2050, amounting to over 70% of its base emissions by 2050. However, the intent of the Climate Commitment Act is to issue a diminishing number of allowances each year, going to zero in 2050. PSE's plan is in conflict with the intent of the climate information supporting these remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. So others confirmed that your audio was a little bit choppy. So Pauline, can you re-add the feedback form link? And Thomas, it sounded like you were reading off of something. If you indeed were, can you put that into the feedback report link, and then PSE can read the whole thing, even though you had some connectivity issues?
Yes, certainly. Sorry about that.
That's fine. It's that time of day. All the machines are slowing down. Looking for anyone else who would like to make a comment. Raise your hand if it would be you. Great. I see another hand came up. Virginia. Wonderful, Virginia. Pauline, can you please promote Virginia?
Hi, thank you very much, Sophie. I appreciate your reading my two questions that I had. And though I really wish I could have heard the little bit that Heather was going to say, because I often find that the answers that are written are just kind of generic and bland, and I think she might have been able to say something in words that would have helped me understand a little bit. I'm also want to say that I appreciate the comments that Thomas just made, and yes, I'm glad that you're going to have him submit those in writing so that we can see thoroughly what they are. So that's all that I want to comment on now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Virginia, for your participation and for, I guess, your flexibility with my strict timing here. Okay, looking at the list here, any other participants want to provide some public comment? It can be comments, concerns, anything. Scanning the list. Right. All right, well, we have a whole 2 minutes left here. So let me we have an important thing we need to finish with. Emily, can you share the slides again, please? All right, next slide, please, Emily. So if you recall, in the beginning, Mark mentioned that there was a spreadsheet that had conservation potential measures. And so, Pauline, can you repaste that conservation potential measures list? This includes energy efficiency, electrification, and demand response. As you all know, this two-track engagement process that PSE is doing is iterative. We recognize, and I recognize as a facilitator, that we're trying to get the balance right between providing access to the many with depth to those that have this knowledge. So for those of you who in your spare time like reading and researching this stuff, and you know who you are, this is an opportunity for you to go one step deeper. So PSE has extended the feedback response until December 1st. And the question that they have for you is, should PSE change or add anything to this list? This list being the spreadsheet that has the conservation potential measures. It is in the chat. It is on PSE's website under today's meeting. If someone could post, Meredith, how people can access it from the general PSE website, because I think Virginia had trouble with the direct link. So this is a chance for you to dive deeper. And then there'll also be another opportunity to go even deeper into demand side resource planning during upcoming RPAG, which is the Resource Planning Advisory Group discussion. So those are open for members of the public to observe, to get real in the weeds, and then provide comments at the end. And as always, that feedback form is at the ready for you. So next slide, please, Emily. In our last minute here, as a reminder, December 1st, this feedback form from today's webinar closes. Those of you who like a good spreadsheet, please take a look at what's in the chat and let PSE know your thoughts on those options and measures. And then we'll come back together on December 7th about emerging resources with hydrogen. I remember last year there was so much chat about hydrogen with a request to have kind of a spotlight on it. So this is PSE's attempt to give you all that spotlight. So thank you all so much for being with PSE as it works on this webinar approach, for spending 90 minutes with us, for all the good questions and answers, and for those of you who will curl up on your couch and look at this spreadsheet for that deeper dive. Thank you again for your time. It is 4:31, and I want to get you out of here because many of you have other places to be and people to take care of. So have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and thank you so much.